All right, Status Audio is back in the spotlight with its latest release, the Pro X True Wireless Earbuds. In fact, they just landed for sale on Amazon a few days ago, but I've had both pre-production and production versions on hand for extensive testing for a few months, and I'm about to give you the skinny on whether or not you should buy them. Okay, to start, here's a little background for you. Status Audio is based out of New York City, and the company first landed on my radar when they shipped me a pair of 3 ANC earbuds a few years ago. And I've got to say, folks, I thought those earbuds were a very solid installment. They sounded great. They gave you control over elements of your sound, and noise canceling capabilities were right there, right there with the best that I've experienced. What I wasn't nuts about, the color of the sample I was given, which Status called bone, and I found the buds were quick to fall out of my ears during exercise, which is a big no-no. Now, full disclosure, I happily used those 3 ANCs until one of the buds was lost, meaning physically lost, and when that happened, I was admittedly bummed out, which is a good indicator, I think, of how much I liked using them. And by using, they were primarily worn around my home while I was walking my dogs outside. So pretty relaxed activities. So when Status contacted me about this latest launch, I was excited to see what kind of improvements had been made to their new product, which leads us to what I'm guessing might be the first question you have. What's the difference between the two? Well, for starters, the new case is smaller. While nearly just about the same weight, it's ever so slightly smaller in all dimensions, which just makes it easier to carry around in a pocket. It also has a new indicator light that looks like a light bar. It's right there at the lip of the lid. It turns on and off when you open and close the case, alerting you to things like charge status. And speaking of opening and closing, I was happy to see the case still has that nice magnetic snap that occurs when you close its lid. Glad to see that Status kept that element intact. And then there's the buds themselves, which, not surprisingly, they have also been reduced in size, and it's a notable reduction in just about every single dimension, and that in my book is a major positive. We're also restricted to just one color with the Pro X, and I applaud that move as well. As I mentioned just a second ago, I just was not a big fan of the bone color Status offered with the 3 ANC. There's just something about it that wasn't appealing to my eye, and I think in some way it just cheapened the overall product for me. So with this Pro X, you get what Status calls black alloy with a nice silver accent on the bottom third of the earbud. And physically speaking, folks, everything from the case right down to the earbuds themselves feels of quality. So no problems in that area. Now, in terms of the design, we are once again given a multi-driver setup with a 12mm dynamic driver plus dual balanced armature drivers made by a company called Knowles. In this build, the dual balanced armature handles the higher end of the audio spectrum, leaving that 12mm driver to dig deep down into the earthly levels of the bass and other regions. The use of this combination makes the Pro X a hybrid earbud, which technically speaking should deliver exceptional sound because we have multiple drivers specialized to tackle specific parts of the frequency spectrum. So before we go on with more of my impressions, let's take a look at some specs that you might find interesting. First off, the buds have a companion app that gives you access to an 8-band equalizer with some factory presets, but also the ability to make your own sound profiles. In terms of Bluetooth, we're looking at Bluetooth 5.3 with Bluetooth LE audio and Auracast support. LE audio is a new update to Bluetooth that basically allows for better sound quality than older versions, and it uses lower bit rates, which means it uses less power. And that's a big deal for folks like us. It also means that each earbud receives its own signal directly from a source, which reduces things like latency. And Auracast is something that you'll be hearing more and more about as time rolls on. Essentially, it means that 2 users with Auracast buds can listen to the same exact source, which opens up a world of possibilities when it comes to shared experiences. Of course, the Pro X has active noise cancellation, a decent battery life, which lands at around around an estimated 8 hours with an additional 24 hours in the charge case. It also has things like a wear sensor, a little tone that it plays if you've lost one of your buds, and something that Status calls VoiceLoom, which is supposed to cut down on background noise during calls. In the box, you'll find 2 additional ear tip sizes, large and small, a USB-C charging cable, and a quick start guide. And that's pretty much it. I gotta say, I just love the fact that everything in the packaging, except for the exterior plastic wrap, is paper-based, which makes it a lot easier to recycle. Now, once you get those buds unpacked and charged up, pairing to an iPhone is literally as easy as placing the earbuds in your ear, selecting Status Pro X on your phone or your computer, and you are off and running. And as I mentioned, you can pair them with multiple devices at the same time. We're talking something like a phone or a computer. And during weeks upon weeks of use, I never had any connection issues. They just paired up every time I asked them to. Connections were stable and strong. And actually, by my estimation, I was able to hold a strong signal with my iPhone 17 for up to around 340 feet with straight line of sight, which is a really impressive number for Bluetooth. Now, we mentioned the app. It gives you quite a bit of useful information. If you flip the lid of the case open, you can see charge status of both buds. You can also see the case's charge status right there in the app. You can toggle between ANC and ambient modes. And there's also a wind noise reduction feature, which I'm going to give low marks. I tested that in multiple ways and couldn't identify any difference in performance there. You also have control over EQ profiles. You can see we're given 5 different factory presets, including 2 status profiles and 1 developed by the creator of the dual balanced armature drivers. And then you're also given the ability to create your own profiles, and you can see mine right there. I do like bass a little on the heavy side. Now, one thing I really liked about that app feature, any changes you make in custom EQ can be heard in real time, so dialing in your preferred sound is really easy to do. The app also gives you the ability to configure all of your touch controls and the single physical button that's on top of each of the earbuds. So you can set up playback controls, volume controls, and all that sort of stuff. The key here is remembering those settings because you have an extensive amount of options. Now, I'd say that's not really going to be that big of a deal for most of you because, look, if the Pro X is your only pair of earbuds, you're going to get used to the controls and how you access them. But if you're like me and you have multiple pairs of earbuds that you cycle through, Status gives you so many options that it's easy to forget what's what and how to access it. For example, I set my Pro X so that tap and hold on the left bud lowers volume while tap and hold on the right bud raises it. And that's just a really cool feature to have, right? You don't have to reach for your iPhone. Just as long as you can remember that that's a gesture option. I guess my concern is that this sort of access to so many features might not be explored by less savvy users, or perhaps might lead to moments of confusion where an accidental triple tap or a trap and hold does something that's not expected. So keep that in mind if you prefer to be a little more hands-off with your devices. All right, let's move on to performance because performance is exactly where the Pro X really shines. I'm going to start things off in an area that might surprise you. Call quality. And that's because the Pro X does something better than any other earbud or headphone that I've ever tested. And that's its ability to subdue your background noise so it doesn't intrude into your conversation with another caller. Now, look, folks, I mean, the bottom line is in nearly every other case that I've tested, and for that matter, experienced in real life, earbuds have a nasty habit of exaggerating background noise, making it distracting and in some cases uncomfortable to have a conversation.
And this is what I'm talking about. Imagine you call me up one day, we're having a conversation, and I'm fooling around in the kitchen, doing some dishes, maybe getting some ice out of my refrigerator, and you can see that it is distracting, if not a tad overwhelming to the conversation. And what you don't know is I can't really hear that on my end because I've got these earbuds in my ears, there's noise canceling on, and to me, everything is sounding relatively quiet.
But now I've switched over to the Status Pro X and I'm performing basically the same exact tasks I was just performing while I was recording that last little segment here. I'm going to walk back over to my refrigerator to get some more ice, and you can see that they have definitely done a much better job at subduing these sounds so they don't overwhelm the conversation. They're not piercing through into the audio. And one of the really cool features that they've embedded into the app is called side tone, which basically turns on ambient sound in your earbuds so you can actually hear your voice, and it allows you to speak a little bit more quietly. You're not shouting because you can hear yourself. Your voice is being picked up by the external microphones and pumped into your ear. Makes it a lot easier to hold a conversation while you're wearing earbuds. And, hats off to Status X, just in terms of really excellent call quality, but also subduing those external sounds so you don't shred whoever you're talking to, you don't shred their ears. And to me, right there, that performance that you heard makes these earbuds a no-brainer buy now item for anyone that's looking for a wireless option that they can wear during work hours while they're multitasking around their home, or even doing something simple like taking a walk where there's obvious environmental noise. Now, speaking of environmental noise, I tested the Pro X's active noise cancellation capabilities in lots of public locations. We're talking about coffee shops, in an airport, on a trade show floor, and yes, even in an airplane that is in flight. And look, I mean, the bottom line is they performed exceptionally well, taking the edge off things and creating that quiet cocoon that we're all searching for in noisy situations. The ambient or transparency mode, on the other hand, is quite good at letting sound in. The app gives you 4 different levels of performance that you can select. For the record, I found the high level to be the most pleasant because basically the level of my own voice sounded most natural as it was pouring in through the earbuds. Now, in terms of sound quality, the Pro X makes good use of its multi-driver approach. And with the 8-band EQ, you can make the buds sound as warm or as bright as you'd like. Most importantly, the low end can be made to sound nice and deep, but it's also tight. It never gets loose. And the sound presentation sounds great at both ends of the volume spectrum as well. So even at low volumes, you can still experience a nice level of depth to your sound. Lots of detail is laced into the sonic presentation of these buds. I was particularly impressed with the low end texture that I found in the Bleachers' Let's Get Married and Billie Eilish's bass rich track Bad Guy. And the mid and upper end sounded fantastic with Orbital's Belfast. Same was true of the Box Part 2, one of my favorite Orbital tracks of all time. Lots of little details etched with character and definition throughout that track, and the buds brought those to the surface. Now, with some earbuds, I found that sound quality is best with ANC engaged, and I'm happy to report that the Pro X sounds just as good with ANC off as it does with it on, which gives you a little more battery life. Just for reference, I generally found that music and podcast listening with ANC on was right around 6.5 hours of use time before I began receiving low battery tones. Wearability wise, and this is a big one for me, the Pro X fit my ears right out of the box. And that's frequently the case with earbuds. But in case they didn't, Status was only giving me 2 other sizing options, which is one short of what we typically find with earbuds. Now, whether or not that move is based on user research, I don't know, but if you find you typically need an odd size, you might want to do a little bit more research to see if the Pro X makes sense for you. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned that the older 3ANC model had a tendency to fall out of my ears during workouts. Not the case with the Pro X. The smaller, slimmed down profile proved to be just really comfortable during things like long runs, and even held strong during movements like jumping rope, which for someone like me who is active a lot, that's a real selling point. And yes, it has an IPX55 rating, which means it can take some sweat and some dirt. So no problem getting down and dirty with these guys. Now, would I recommend the Pro X as your go-to workout earbud? Probably not. For me, some of the bone conductance options that are out there and what Clear is doing with their ARC support are just better options for most workout situations with a lot of movement. But if you're in a noisy gym and you're lifting or performing moderate movement exercises, the Pro X is perfectly fine for things like that. So folks, it's hard for me to find much fault with these buds. If anything, their ability to knock down the intrusion of ambient noise during calls just instantly jettisons them right to the top of my list. And I also love the fact that they have an app mode that allows you to boost your voice so you're not shouting when you're wearing the earbuds. Basically, what Status has pulled off in that call department, simply spectacular. And of course, all of the other performance factors delivered by the Pro X are just icing on the cake. Regular price on these is $299. You can find them right now on Amazon. I'll drop links down in the description to them and a few of the other wearables that I've alluded to during this review. If you'd like to support the channel and our forum at no additional cost to you, you can use those links. Otherwise, they're totally easy to find on your own. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the AV and home theater forum, avnirvana.com.